Welcome. I'm Barbara Call, Senior Director of Content Operations and Strategy at IDG, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's webcast. Today we're going to explore a topic that many of us are probably familiar with, working remote in the new normal. Joining me to discuss this topic is Shawn, Director of Digital Sales at Citrix. Shawn has spent the last 15 years entrenched in the world of SMB solutions, covering everything from branding to marketing to IT and VDI solutions. He currently spends his professional time as a Director of Digital Sales, working as a trusted advisor for SMBs on a wide range of initiatives, from virtualizing workforces to digital transformation, improving security footprints, and improving employee engagement and productivity. Shawn helps small and medium businesses be more secure, agile, and productive in an age where thriving and competing requires both. Welcome, Shawn.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm glad to be here. I've looked forward to this and appreciate the opportunities. I want to say hello to listeners and, again, honored to be here with you today.
Excellent. All right. So I wanted to start off with setting a little bit of context in light of the changing business environment. It looks like there are three waves of the new normal emerging. We've got crisis, which was the acute stage, Band-Aid, which is what I refer to, what's happening now, and then the new normal, where people will start to make more permanent adjustments. And I think you and I would both agree that we've moved from stage 1 to stage 2, but this is where some of the real work starts. Is that right?
Yeah, Barbara, that's right, and it's correct. And I think it's important to maybe take a second to recognize unprecedented challenges businesses are working through. I mean, you know, we certainly spend our daily lives trying not to be tone deaf to that, specifically since March. And the new normal, as you mentioned it, you know, might be just one of those challenges. So we want to recognize that it's a tough landscape and, you know, there's just many challenges out there. I think secondly, Barbara, we're already seeing that, you know, investments are being made, that digital transformation has been on a continuum for some time. In fact, it's funny because in my career, I've been using digital transformation as a term or phrase for almost 10 years and started out in marketing and trying to move people from print advertising into digital solutions. So I think that, you know, obviously we're seeing recent developments in work mandates, and they forced IT teams to really expedite their initiatives that really they may have already been in progress with. So I think it's important. But to answer your question, absolutely. I think that, you know, there is a difference. We'll talk a little bit about business continuity versus IT disaster recovery. But, you know, right now it's more critical than ever for folks to be focused in those areas. So I think, you know, what we found interesting in development over time is really the employee-centric, and the experience and the engagement is driving a lot more of this than I think historically we have seen. So I think that's an important point.
That's great. Thanks, Shawn. So I wanted to share, here at IDG, we've conducted some new research to better understand how the current coronavirus pandemic is affecting not just the business environment, but IT leaders' roles and their priorities and what they think the long-term effects will be, both on their IT organization and their business as a whole. So we conducted a study called the CIO COVID-19 Impact Study. We did that in April. Just as an aside, about 45% of the survey respondents work at companies with 5,000 employees or less. So it's very relevant to our audience here. And here are some of the findings. 71% said the current work-from-home shift has created a more positive view of remote workplace policies and will likely impact how we plan for office space, tech staffing, and overall staffing in the future. We also asked, what are your CEO's top 3 priorities for you to help the business persevere through the current disruption? And the top 2 answers, tied at 37% of respondents, were leading digital business, digital transformation initiatives, and improving remote work experiences. So, Shawn, it sounds like this jives with what you're seeing in the market as well, yeah?
Oh, for sure. You know, one comment back to the physical space, you know, line item. This is a byproduct, I think, of the movement of the new normal. So how will this affect a company's investment in real estate, whether they buy, rent, or lease, for example? again, a main driver is going to be, I think I recall, 65% who say they would rather work from home in some capacity, right? And that lends to the improving remote work experiences. I think, secondly, SMBs have been in the transformation game, as I mentioned, for a while. That's not new. But, I'll tell a quick story. We had very little notice we were going to get the work from home order from Citrix. I think things are pretty dicey for all states and et cetera involved. And, I would say that in a matter of minutes, I was up and running with all of my content seamlessly, securely. I could do it on any device that I wanted. And it was just really cool for us as employees, but mission critical for the company to be able to transition like that. I really keyed in when I saw the content here on the right-hand side. And again, I'm a big proponent of things being sort of consumer or employee-centric. And we're definitely seeing that movement independent of really the new normal, but certainly amplified tremendously by the new normal.
All right, great. Yeah, so it's really clear that remote work is a priority. We've seen it at IDG as well. I have a few data points from our sister company, IDC, that illustrate this is also the case among SMBs, although they are lagging behind their enterprise counterparts to a certain extent. So as part of the IDC Futurescape Worldwide SMB 2019 predictions, IDC forecasted that by the end of 2021, 60% of SMBs worldwide will have formal or informal mobile worker support in place. And then as part of its IDC Futurescape Worldwide SMB 2020 predictions, IDC forecasted that by 2022, over 40% of SMBs will have a defined strategy and goals developed for the changing nature of work. So it sounds like they're moving. This is in action. What are your thoughts here, Shawn?
Yeah, I often think of this. I think in my head about the Rogers model, which just details early adopters, laggards, et cetera. And there's no doubt there's more spending power. There's more experience, and there may be even a lot more. In fact, we see a lot more investment money, obviously, in larger companies. So. It is true. SMBs, they lag to come from my example from earlier, from print advertising to digital. So we do see that. I do, when I recall my conversations currently with business owners and C-suite and the like, we do see those numbers resonating, and they're resonating pretty clearly. So in other words, if I were to take, 2 of every 5 conversations, they seem to have a defined strategy. Whether they've enacted that strategy or where they are in the continuum would be specific to the example. But overall, I think those numbers are I could confirm, I guess I would say. But my first thought is we realize, for example, COVID-19 looks like we're not sure we realize what it looks like long term. I'll give you a quick example. Our phase 4 return requires a vaccine into our building physically. And while that may be aggressive, we really don't know what the end of that looks like. So do we see a cyclical thing where it comes back? So I just expect that these numbers to be true, to not only resonate more and increase, but I think it will speed up that continuum. So that's kind of number one. And then when we are looking at a situation where, I'll tell a quick story, the phasing nature really is, when we look at phase 4, it was told to us at Citrix that you'll have to feel safe coming back. So it really may be left as autonomous to the worker at the end of the day. But I would say additionally, referencing what we're seeing, the desired state will likely be required for things like retaining top talent. And then, people talk. So, a friend says, hey, I have this ability, and I haven't, let's say, for example, experienced that remote work myself. I don't know really what to envy, although I think that might be kind of cool. Well, guess what? Since March, millions of American workers can now say that they've experienced that. And majority are saying they prefer it, at least partially. So I think it's important for businesses to have their planning and their continuum, matching what their workforce is desiring to some level, within reason, of course. But does the current environment allow for that? In most cases with SMBs, it's not done real well. And you alluded to the phases there. a lot of SMBs are not in phase 3, where we see commercial and enterprise really heading in there, so it leads to the lagging. Lastly, I think good enough is seldom okay. Eventually, we have to transition. What we're working to do is account for shortcomings in security, agility, performance, and employee engagement and productivity. So good enough does not really address this wholesale. And a quick story I'll give you is my son is he just finished up his freshman year in high school. So we had challenges there, but one of the challenges additionally with the current environment was they just went to a video conferencing solution. And we're hearing, some horror stories out there on the security of these solutions. So with something like a Citrix Workspace solution, you can bring in that application and know you're doing that securely. So you don't have to alter the product that you're using. If you're using a mainstream product, for example, Workspace is going to be a great fit for that. But I would say that what I would like to see from SMBs is to just recognize that we understand they're spread thin. We understand they're having to make really lean decisions. And so my approach with owners and decision makers has always been one from an ROI-driven perspective. So at minimum, we look at SSO, for example, right? And that's just a product of having to have a whole bunch of different passwords for different things, and you're having to reset them at different times. And what we found is research shows that the employee would lose an hour a day of productivity with that alone. So we are literally, reaching out to business owners and saying, how would you like to have an hour back for each employee? And there's a value to that. So when we look at that, I think also, content, you should be securing your content and intellectual property at minimum. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the options, certainly, that Citrix has and why that's important upcoming.
All right. So let's transition over into talking specifically about Citrix and what you've got going on, Shawn.
Sure. So when I'm approaching businesses, this slide really just hit me, and I'm glad it's formatted the way it is. It's simple to the point. But when we look into these things, where are we at risk? And risk doesn't just mean I can't work because VPN is funky, or I can't work because of the latencies. I mean, I talk to customers and they have power users that are experiencing like 2-second latency. Well, I don't know if you've ever tried to type with that, but it's really cumbersome. So, productivity gap, simple example, too many passwords, SSO can we think save an hour a day. As I mentioned, you do the math. This is real math, and this is ROI driven. So when we look at the cost of an SSO solution, typically, and certainly within Citrix, we have base model offerings that can get SSO and additional functionality with a really easy ROI. So to me, it's like, hey, let's give that. We can even do a dual factor authentication if we need to, where we're using a VIP token. But SSO, I think minimum businesses should be utilizing. It's a quick pick up in productivity. It pays for itself easily. And so that's the base level that I'm really looking at in increasing productivity. Of course, you look at latency and a lot of those other things, lack of failover and some of those architectural things can really put a damper on productivity. But I think there's a simple example of how we can pick up productivity per employee. When I look at collaboration, this is near and dear to my heart. I actually came into Citrix through what we called the ShareFile organization. And if you recognize the name ShareFile, Citrix acquired ShareFile almost a decade ago. And what we found through research is that roughly 20% or up to 20% of an employee's time is found searching for the right content. So I don't know if you've ever done that where you're searching, I know where it was, and so we have content collaboration as part of the Workspace offering, and that's a really easy ROI driven conversation as well. Find the right content, but not only that, save in real time, share. You can set up folder permissions, etc. So not to get in the weeds there, but we tend to solve for finding content, context switching, working in silos. If we can get departments, HR and IT and all these different departments using the same tools, now we're picking up productivity, and Citrix does a really good job, I think, of quantifying that for an SMB decision maker. And so I think that's important. security and compliance might be the number one priority. Strangely, it's not the number one conversation we're having, but we always bring it to the table because it is an additional benefit with our solutions. But for example, if somebody needs to be HIPAA compliant or FINRA compliant, and there's a lot of state, local, and national government compliances that need to be adhered to. So, we're keeping all of those in mind and really offering that environment for those folks that need that. And I think that's both immediately and in phase 3. So really, wherever you are in those 3 phases, if you recall, we can help with these sorts of risks. Modernizing infrastructure, I think one term you'll hear a lot about is zero trust. And I think it's, I stole a little bit from one of our Citrix blog authors, but, this is going to be one of the hottest topics for 2020 and 2021. And, I don't think it's a secret. It's starting to unearth as far as in the news, but really you're seeing where this is going to be a hackathon. But with the shift to remote work, I'm even more convinced. Zero trust principles, never trust, always verify, just-in-time access, and just enough access will be core to many organizations as they look at security approaches. So, I think that, all of these matter. They're risks. I think there are risks that many of our customers are aware of. But when we really look at, what are the characteristics there? And how do I even start to approach that if I haven't begun that transformation? Because many SMBs are getting, for lack of a better phrase, forced into this journey and might not have been ready for it, or it might have been on the roadmap. So what are the characteristics? I think it's seamless. So you heard me talk. I can open up a document, edit that document, and it will land in the folder it's previously landed in. I can close my laptop, open up my mobile in Workspace interface, and pick up right where I left off. So it's really seamless no matter the device, individual place. I think it's really important to look at the productivity when you're looking at the cost of a solution, because the productivity gains many times we find pay for the solution. And instead of having to find a line item, now it is a chasm to cross, for the decision maker. And another example would be O365. So this is a time for maybe us to plug our partnership with Microsoft. It's a great one. It's been long-standing. And, when people say, hey, I have O365 or I have OneDrive, I'm set, our reply is always awesome, perfect. Because, why would we partner with Microsoft? Well, we do it because we make each other's products better and more seamless, and, workers are more productive. And, so that's important. We want to be able to seamlessly move from app to app, content to a browser, et cetera. So it could be within one device where you're context switching and you're really doing that more efficiently, or it can be on many different devices doing the same task. Workspace from Citrix can even apply intelligence features on top of that. So we have, some of our offerings offer the intelligence features, which will say, hey, it's 9 o'clock. It's your normal staff meeting. This is the document you normally pull up. Here it is. Do you want it? So it's serving up via learning engines and algorithms, learning your work habits and really applying intelligence features. So you want to talk about increased productivity and flexibility. That's a great example, I would say. And then anywhere and anytime would be a BYOD. So I'm going to steal this from a colleague, Jeff, but, one question he asked up front is, what if I could get you out of the PC business? And it kind of stops businesses in their track, and they say, well, what do you mean? And we say, well, you're doing a hardware refresh, every couple of years. What if you just did a BYOD and you had them in Workspace, which is a clean interface for all apps, desktops, et cetera, content, and they could just work out of that, and they could do it on any device. They could bring their own device. They want to work on a Mac. They can do that. Or, how about if we just want to think shaving your costs, get them all thin clients, get them Chromebooks. And, that will slice the investment at minimum in half for the hardware, and again, finds a way for them to play it. So I thought it was important to have kind of an ROI theme, because there's a lot of things people want to do. There's maybe less investment money than there has been historically. And, we need to find ways to not only solve the business problem, but be able to kind of give them a picture of, what that might look like, from a return investment standpoint. So, I think that all of these things are important. We talk about security, the old normal, it was important, let alone the new. But your intellectual property is somewhat sprawled. We're finding across all business sizes. And so what used to be in network, as I mentioned, is there. So again, we need to have zero trust and verify. And the Workspace solution, for example, we'll talk about here in a little bit, offers a great way to do that. So as we transition through, this is obviously adopts the main pillars. We're looking to secure and protect data and applications, productivity and collaboration. So we go back to the video conferencing solution for my son's high school. We want to secure that application and the work that's being done in there. And, I talk to specifically SMBs will have many different ways of housing content. So whether they're using other content collaboration solutions, Workspace can work with that. You don't have to adopt our content collaboration solution. You can have that living as an application within the UI. So that's important. Productivity, collaboration, we've talked about. The collaboration piece is interesting because we're using O365, for example, and we'll transition from their Office suite to Teams to other applications in real time. As a I don't know if it's as a director, but as an employee at Citrix, I'll use a dozen applications minimum daily. And again, like I have to, approve expense report. Not my favorite thing to do, but I am in SSO, so I do shave time there, and I have to go in there. Well, the intelligence features offered in some of the Workspace offerings can serve that up and say, hey, you have an expense report, and we use a micro app technology to say, do you want to approve that from here? And so it's all there in the dashboard in the feed. So really, really cool stuff, and we're happy to demo that at any time. So, important things here, modernizing IT infrastructure, I think is just something that, it's always been there, but modernizing today, we look at the individual's experience. It needs to be powered by a better way to work. That's what we're consistently hearing from power users within companies. It needs to be a unified experience, so we're eliminating those silos. So a good example is HR uses one application to complete their work, and for the same type of task, another department uses another application. So, we want to provide an environment that provides contextual end-to-end security. And, security in, security out, and gives good visibility to the activities. So that's modernizing. If you ask IT admins, what are your challenges today? And they'll tell you, with this remote work, I have a ton of support tickets, right? And so we can sometimes quantify that and say, well, if we could reduce that in half, let's say, just by having an SSO feature, talking to a recent SMB, they spent, it cost them $3,000, which might pale in comparison to some enterprises, but $3,000 for an SMB a month in cost of support tickets. And so these are the types of things that we're talking about when we're talking about, agility, security, and experience. Why Citrix? There's a lot of solutions out there. I can tell you that I get on the phone with many businesses and they'll say, oh, I checked that box. I have a managed desktop, for example. And so, sometimes when they have a solution, that's, a tougher conversation because we need to get in there and kind of induce what the gaps are in some of the pillars that we talked about on the previous slide. So, yes, you have a managed desktop, but you are transmitting your files, which are sensitive, via email and with no encryption or protection. So that's something we can provide, of course. But when we look at, really, we want it's a new way to work, obviously, but we really want to enable, and that's the key word that I grabbed on here is enable. We're stuffing sort of new applications and new solutions at workers, and so our investment's going up, and so that IT initiative spends are going up. But what we're actually seeing is the gains are not meeting the expected productivity, and so that gap grows as you invest more. And so, for example, if you hand me 10, applications, and each one is super valuable to, improve my work life in its own silo, what we'll see is I could actually lose productivity and not realize the actual gains that the investment is supposed to find. So there's a lot of reasons for that. We've mentioned, complexity, silos, context switching, finding content, but it's creating that gap, and it only gets bigger as investment gets bigger. So how do we, increase the operational flexibility, productivity, and visibility? At Citrix, we do that, many different ways, but we're going to see a little bit on our workspace solution. And I would implore all businesses, as I said, even from a base model, to do an SSO and content collab package, and we can easily work through that and see how that might provide a return in your current environment. And that's a pretty easy conversation. So when we look at solutions that support remote working, we have many, as I said, and businesses are investing in us in many ways outside of just Workspace. So Workspace is obviously our future of work. It's a single pane of glass. It houses, all apps and allows, as I said, seamless use across devices. You can have different classes of users and permissions, and there's a great, console with analytics provided for IT admins as well. So there is some implementation and there's a little bit of infrastructure required. And as we get down to the smallest businesses, they might have some challenges there. So we'll talk about, at the bottom of the slide, a solution for that. But as I said, Essentials is the branded name. So Workspace Essentials gives us single sign-on. I believe, and I'm not here to quote pricing, but it's in the single digits per user per month. So when you talk about just picking up an hour a day, boom, you've paid for that and then some. I mentioned multi-factor. That'd be, kind of a dual authentication where I'm putting in a VIP token, if you guys have ever done that. And, it just gets all the applications and content in one unified experience. It says there, back to the video conferencing solution. If students are signing in, and we're having great progress with education. The education vertical, by the way, is on fire right now, and they're buying in ways they've never bought. Out of cycle, out of fiscal year, they're having to kind of play the shell game a little bit, but their employees, faculty, staff, students will sign into the workspace, and then they can get into a lab, for example. That previously maybe they had to be physically at the lab, right? So now they can run that lab remotely. So, there's a bunch underneath Workspace. We've got a bit of a matrix coming up that you'll get to see, but content collaboration, you can really, if you want to talk about onboarding a new employee. So, unfortunately, we have recently heard of many companies laying off workers, and I think as the smoke clears, a lot of those will come back and rehire. Imagine if you could onboard an employee, even twice as fast. We've seen higher numbers and metrics, but if you can onboard an employee by giving them access to all the content they're going to need, rather than sprawled across several different areas, and you can keep your security protocols in place, they'll get everything that they need when they're onboarded, and it's turnkey. And they create a password for Workspace, and bam, they're in. You can create permission levels, groups. This group has access to Workday, for example. This group should not. You can really dial that up and put them into a class of workers, so you don't even have to manually assign those permissions. Endpoint management is important. For example, you don't want somebody accessing company information in a non-secure way on their mobile. So you're going to be managing devices anywhere, whether those are personal or company owned. So in my org, some people have company paid cell phones, some don't. It's kind of a role thing. But whether you do or not, we'll be managing that and keeping the sensitive data off of those devices. And then lastly, I mentioned Citrix Managed Desktops. That's for, we saw a lot of this in phase 1 and even phase 2, where I just need to spin up a desktop for a remote worker, and I need to do it quick from a nice, easy admin console, and I don't even want to think about it. Or scenario 2, I don't have an IT admin. I don't have those infrastructures. We talk to businesses down to 1 or 2 employees, frankly. So they're not going to have that department, and they're wearing many hats. And so That's in a partnership with Microsoft. It's an Azure consumption model, but DAS, as we call it, or CMD here at Citrix, it'll provide those organizations that lack that IT capacity the ability to manage desktops really simply. So not for everybody there. Again, it's a very low bar in terms of investment, and I think that when we look at some of the things we've talked about already, we can again easily look at that and say that here's your return, right? So when you're running lean, you need to make lean decisions. We want to be there to help you do that. So I mentioned, Citrix Workspace quite a bit, and we have some pretty lofty goals. We do believe this is the future of work, and I can personally attest that it's really, I don't want to be too overbearing in my comment, but it's really been game changing for me and my team and my colleagues and the people I'm collaborating with, cross functionally. And there's different levels, obviously, of workspace capabilities that we can offer a company. I mentioned from, the entry point to SSO, it's VPN-less access. And, so that could be a good barrier, of entry. And, then we look at the top end where we're really getting a robust, interface of analytics and, really granular. And, we'll talk about some examples there, and then all the way up to the intelligence features. When we first demoed this at one of our customer/partner events, people ate it up, and it's really there's nothing out there like it. When we look at the total package of Workspace, there's just no offering doing what this does, and it's just giving that kind of single pane of glass. It's secure. We do make recommendations to beef up the infrastructure behind. We have IDC, for example, is a good add-on if not accounted for, and that really increases the security there in the infrastructure and flexibility, frankly. But you'll see that on the left-hand side, we're talking about these things that we're virtualizing. So we talked about the new normal. Experience, employee experience. I can't even tell you whether you're hearing it from. If you're not hearing it from your employees, you're probably not asking. Because every single study metric that comes out says that the employee matters, and they're really a consumer. When we look at the employee themselves, they're really a consumer of employment. Let me put it that way. And so it's important that they be of good, sound mind, body. They're happy. They're not bogged down in some of the challenges that we talked about. So employee experience. And you'll see the micro app service there, and the second line item includes intelligent feeds. And so I've mentioned a couple of examples there, but really streamlining work based on what we do, whether it's repetitively or we do something once a week, or gosh, I can tell you if I have to go in to do expense reports or PTO requests, those are things that I bunch together prior to having Workspace, because it was just a task I didn't want to do because it took me out of the lane I was driving in. So this has really brought that back in, and in a click, it's just very easy to access that and complete the task. So again, I'm happier, I'm more productive, I am more of an advocate for the company. I'm going to stay longer. Like, all of these things are sometimes for SMBs a bit hard to quantify, and we're happy to help. But they're all valuable, and they're all, adding to the overall bottom line. And I think if we can really get dialed in there, and we really are having a good employee experience, then all kind of cascades from there, sort of like throwing a stone in a pond. Control and security, access control is super important. I don't need to tell IT folks that, but app protection policies. It's funny. Occasionally, I'll arrive at a website, and there's no malice in my mind. I'll give you a good example, like a meme generator, because we have a Slack function where we're chatting with the team, and sometimes we want to put a funny meme in there, and there's sites you can go to generate one. All of a sudden, on a Friday, I could access it, and on Monday, I couldn't. So IT admin has, taken the liberty, and probably rightfully so, to go in there and say, this is no longer a site that I'm going to give you access to, because we've seen it's been associated with this, that, or the other. So understanding that, I think with we're already seeing hacking up, but I think it's going to be up pretty considerably. I heard the term 400%, because of that sprawl outside of the network. We talked about endpoint management. Think of endpoint as, your devices. You know that we do secure mail as well, so that's something that I'm happy to have. I can encrypt a message at any minute, or I can just turn the setting on to where all my emails are encrypted. The content collaboration, to back up a second, I'll give a use case. We work a lot with a number of different types of businesses, obviously, pretty much across the board, and even today, in challenging times. So, architects, they need to send and receive large files that often outweigh what the email capabilities are. Well, you can send right from the content collaboration function and share out in a safe and quicker way. So you're picking up productivity. You're not having to bounce out and turn it to a different type of file and play that game, a zip file, whatever it is. You're able to send that right from within the console without even leaving to go to, let's say, a mail application. Virtual apps and desktops is, I think some may know it as Zen App and Zen Desktop. That is a feature included in the Premium Plus feature. So if we have businesses, for example, that have virtualized with us, let's say with VAD, we can then transition them to the Premium Plus offering, and they'll get that inherent and it's seamless, and we can just move that right in. And I think analytics are important. There's different levels of analytics that we offer with the workspace, but when we're remote, it becomes even important to know, like, it's not necessarily a net nanny type thing, but it's like, look, I'll give an example. Employee gives a 2 weeks notice. We hope that never happens, by the way. We hope we all retire together. But let's say the employee gives a 2 weeks notice, and 2 days before he leaves, he decides in the middle of the night that he's going to start downloading a ton of content to take with him to the next role. You can set the parameters and certainly have the visibility, but you can really limit what an individual is able to do. So as we move on, obviously there's a lot of solutions out there. I really look at kind of breaking down. So the next few slides are really going to look at, some use cases, and I'll try to drop in some examples of, customers that we're working for, and working with and collaborating with, and often we'll have a solution, and as their trusted advisor, they'll come back and say, well, I have this other thing I'm trying to work through. I just thought I'd check with you. And we're like, oh yeah, we definitely can help with that. That's an advanced level, analytics, and, we can help get that added on to the package, for example. But, there's definitely, and when you're talking about protecting sensitive data, so we work with, a couple of examples are, aerospace manufacturers. They don't necessarily that's a pretty competitive and thin landscape, but they don't necessarily want their when we get to their investments, what they're investing in, what their focus is in, and really how they're innovating. They don't want those things to get out there. I mentioned the architects. How about healthcare with HIPAA? There's a number of examples where people really don't have the full gamut of choice in solutions. They have to go with something that, might be HIPAA compliant, for example. So, we're definitely protecting against things like data breaches, leaks. Those are important. They can be costly. And, when we look at, insurance companies, for example, probably their phones are ringing off the hook lately. But they don't normally cover lost productivity, lost, employee work, things like that. So we want to make sure that we're fending off and getting ahead of disaster relief, and recovery plans. So, that's something that it's a very proactive approach. And, a lot of people come to us with a reactive and say, gosh, this just happened to me. I got hit with malware or whatever it is. And, so we're reactive then, and we can do that. But we really want to set up, a secure and agile environment where we are really able to be proactive and give sound peace of mind to our customers. So those are kind of the main challenges. There's a lot of other challenges too. We'll get into, trading companies out of New York, and they've got to work on multiple monitors, and their performance and video is really important, to compete and stay real time and do the things they need to do for their investment. And so when we look at solutions, workspace, analytics, content collaboration, those are minimum kind of thresholds that I would, advise SMBs to adopt. That way they know the behaviors and what's happening with their folks. They are able to pick up productivity on an SSO, and they're able to securely share and send and receive their content. And it's not sprawled out there outside of network. Customer benefits to protecting sensitive data should be fairly obvious, but control safe exchange and compliance with sensitive data. I mean, there's a number of different examples, and I've shared a few, but there's mission critical content that really needs to, law documents. I think of insurance companies, really depend on having those things safe and secure and not being breached. It provides the users with a simple and secure method to access SaaS and web apps. I can't even explain to you how easy Workspace is. They do time me out from time to time, but it's not like every hour on the hour. It might be I have to sign in once additionally throughout the day. But I'm secure. I'm in the Workspace now, by the way, and all of my things are protected in one pane of glass. I really like the functionality to the customer benefits. I like to say is, makes you more agile. You can sort of drag and drop or favorite. Let's say you have 10 desktops deployed. You don't want to stare at all of them on your dashboard interface. You can just favorite and bring them up to the top. Same with documents recently used. It's going to bring those up to the top. So you have the documents that you're most accessing. So again, it's not just the pickup in the gains in productivity for the worker. It really, as we've seen, and Barbara alluded to earlier in some of the findings, it has to do with mentality, stress, all of those things. If we're constantly looking for a document, and I'm under a time crunch, I'm stressed, right? And so if I can find that more easily and share it out, obviously that stress level is going to come down. So that it's just simple, secure, it's easy, it's all in one place, and I don't have to work outside of that if I don't like to. So, ever gone to a coffee house and popped your laptop open and just hopped on their Wi-Fi? I feel a lot better doing that, via Workspace, Citrix Workspace solution than, just kind of crossing my fingers. And we see a lot of that. I see coffee houses. I'm a big coffee fan, by the way. And then protecting data for complete IT oversight, obviously. You can see how many times something's been downloaded, shared. You can actually limit the permissions per folder, really, to say, okay, this person can only view only, and this person can edit and download. So there's some more capabilities that are in the weeds, but those are the main points. And then multiple apps needed to collaborate. This one makes me chuckle. I was invited to participate on this medium, and I added it to my folder of video conferencing as just the title I happen to have on there. And I would say that that's probably my 7th application that I've used in 2 months. And so, do we just want to trust that these applications are sound? No, I want to have them all in my workspace. And that way, no matter where I click, I'm coming in through the workspace and assuring not only myself, but my organization that I'm doing that in a safe way. So the solutions, there'll be some overlap here from the previous slide, but content collaboration, we have tens of thousands of companies that are using our content collaboration function, and, they swear by it. So, yes, I believe that we're better than the competing products. I have to, they pay me to, but I really do believe that is a bar none. You should have that. That's baked into the Workspace interface. And so you'd see that in a demo that's not a standalone application. It's actually incorporated just like your desktops and your application sit. So it's almost like having a file drive within Workspace, and it's organized all neatly and cleanly how you deem to name the folders. And again, I can share a folder with my direct reports, who are 4 managers, and not share it with the rest of the team. And so they have access to my weekly updates that I send to my boss, for example. So I set those permissions. So that's a really cool feature of content collaboration, and there are many. I would go with feedback and approval workflows. These are for folks that want to create custom workflows. Let's say an accountant, they want to streamline some of the workflows during a heavy season. We also have the capability to use a signature function so we can electronically share. I'm honestly surprised how many places, companies, et cetera, are still having you ink sign something. Having an e-document or an e-functionality to sign documents there. But back to the workflows and approvals, let's say I come up with a draft and I'm collaborating with 6 people and I want their feedback notes, et cetera. They can go ahead and we can set up, an approvals flow to where we get sign-off ultimately for those people we're collaborating with, and we can do all that, again, accessing those tools through Workspace. And then SSO, Workspace Essentials is, I believe, vital. Again, it's a relatively low investment as far as barrier, easy ROI, and think of not having to put in all of your passwords separately for all your applications. You're just authenticating into Workspace and have access right away in a blink. So we talked about the benefits: large sharing, improved workflow efficiency and automated workflows. I mean, gosh, with the feedbacks and approvals, that saves a lot of time. You don't have to continuously attach, and then people are attaching on top of attaching. Google Suite is often used because it's a collaborating tool in real time. So whether it's a spreadsheet or a Google Sheet, I should say, again, those applications can live within Workspace, and we can do those things with security and peace of mind. And as we move through, we look at increasing workforce productivity. You're starting to notice a lot of themes, so we'll probably be able to wrap up these final slides in faster fashion. But again, large files, when we're looking for increasing productivity, productive workers are happy workers. They stay longer. You have less attrition. Their referrals for friends and family members are up. People are bragging about the places they work because they're happy, because they're efficient and can get their work done in a streamlined way. Data stored across legacy systems and clouds. We have hybrid multi-cloud functionality here, so we're what we like to call cloud agnostic. So you don't need to feel like, I'm with one cloud provider or another. Teams need to be fully productive and fully engaged. And what we're finding, just the feedback is that they're not. They're challenged really with increased complexity at minimum. So some of the solutions, again, content collaboration can help with that. The SSO feature within Essentials, again, CEM, content collaboration, and virtualization. So endpoint management is Citrix endpoint management there. So those are all valid solutions that we can talk through with SMBs. And I think the benefits, obviously, access and share on any device. I share many documents via my mobile. Sometimes I'm running a dual, or I'm working on 2 devices at once, and 2 monitors on my laptop. So I've really got 3 views right here that I can flow seamlessly from. And most important in the new normal, give remote workers secure access to all applications, reducing the need to reset passwords. Gosh, what a pain. And deploy and manage virtual desktops on their own. Is certainly important, and we talked about the CMD solution. CMD is separate from Workspace. It is really just a specific use case, normally smaller companies. I had a crocheting company, believe it or not, that had independent contractors globally. And so that was good because he didn't have infrastructure and he could easily deploy a desktop. So we're going to wrap up here really quick. I know you guys have been gracious in listening to me talk and, modernizing and simplifying IT. I think technology in general, we will see this sort of force the issue with some businesses and some verticals, if not all. And the challenges really there are BYOD, so bring your own device. If I want to bring a Mac and I want to work on a map, but my company's not going to pay for it. Maybe I prefer to work on a tablet. Maybe I want to use the work device, but I also want to use my personal devices. And maybe I want to be in a coffee house or an Airbnb, or maybe I want to move around my house. So that's a challenge. Legacy infrastructure and app and data sprawl. We've talked about sprawl. Getting out of network is risky. We want to secure that for you. And then having siloed SSO solutions to lead to complexity and IT sprawl is we've talked about a challenge. So again, content collaboration, cloud connectors are built. Managed desktops is again an easy way to deploy a desktop via Azure consumption, and great partnership there with that product with Microsoft. Essentials and SSO we've talked about. And, support BYOD. Gosh, could I get you out of the PC game, right? Let's remember that. And, we're doing that every day with customers. Really simplifying their spends in the hardware department. And SSO means, easier management and reduce IT costs, and that's big. IT costs are skyrocketing right now, and so any solution that can, sort of reverse that course or even hold steady is a win for many businesses. And finally, a unified workspace for apps, data, and desktops. That's really the takeaway. Have all of those things in one place. I'm not aware of a solution out there, and I do know my competitors that ties it up all into one place. That's as easy to use, and again, on the top end has those intelligence features. So I've had a lot of fun. It's a lot of talking. Hopefully Barbara's still with me, but, really we are in the new normal, independent of any kind of digital transformation that might have been occurring separately. And, I'm confident in Citrix solutions, obviously, but I would implore SMBs and all businesses to really, really think about some of the challenges. And, of course, I'm biased, but give us a call and we'll help talk through those solutions.
Thanks, Shawn. That was great. Very informative. Thank you to my guest today, Shawn Allen, Director of Digital Sales at Citrix. For additional information on this topic, please visit the resources area on your screen. And thanks for joining us. For IDG and Citrix, I'm Barbara Call.